Thank you everybody for joining us here. I want to get into this bad boy. So without further ado, let's get into it. So it's our Ansys Startup Program webinar. And again, my name is Derek Crenshaw, Northern California Account Manager. First, pretty simple, just want to go over our basic agenda of what we are going to be covering in this webinar. So going to be going over a little bit of educational in the beginning and get a little bit more granular there at the end on, typical product development challenges, who RANSIM is, who I represent, who RANSIM is, where you can leverage simulation, why Ansys is a great partner to choose, how you guys as a startup can leverage Ansys, and then go into a little bit of detail on the different physics that Ansys provides, being structures, fluids, electromagnetics, how we bundle those together, and then what eligibility looks like. So without further ado, tell you guys a little bit about RANSIM. Again, I'm Derek Crenshaw. I'm an account manager for RAN Simulation. We have been doing simulation, providing consulting and products for years now. We actually are the fastest channel partner of Ansys to reach elite channel partner status. So where we are a little bit different in how we provide our products is that we also do services and consulting. So we do have a collaborative consulting business model. So the majority of our customers that choose to partner with us are because of this collaborative consulting, where we don't necessarily just give you the simulation product and say, hey, good luck, we'll give you a few trainings and you're off on your own. But we can kind of be an arm of your guys' engineering team and provide consulting and services in some cases. Really, our best customers that we have usually do a mixture of both, have a little bit of product, utilize a little bit of our services consulting, and kind of use it as a collaborative consult rather than just a kind of one-trick pony, if you will. So let's talk about why we're here. So essentially, want to talk a little bit about why people would invest in simulation. So our first slide that we have here is your guys' new product development strategies and goals. So what I've set up here is a little triangle that kind of shows a little bit into what your typical new product development goals are. Pretty much the majority of people will follow within, these three main bullets: design, marketability, and process as a part of the new product development goals. So, when looking over the design, you're looking to get, improved performance, stronger innovation, cutting costs without sacrificing your quality, and most importantly for, startups, is competitive differentiation. Also need to consider the marketability goals, generating market interest, achieving targeted sales numbers, showcasing product differentiators, and things of that nature. And then third, which in my opinion is the most important for, startups in terms of what we're talking today, is process. So, reducing physical testing, compressing time to market, minimizing production cost. For you guys, I definitely want to put an emphasis on compressing time to market to effectively compete against your established competitors, especially being in the startup realm. When it comes to, compressing that time to market can be really, really important in these competitive situations with people that might have already established products. Now, there's a variety of new product development strategies that you would go to. The fundamental ways to achieve these are of these three nice little circled areas that we have here. So historical product knowledge, physical testing, and simulation. So, when it comes to historical product knowledge, it's definitely where, startups don't usually have the benefit of that. In some cases they might, but, obviously being in your infancy, that product knowledge is being developed day in and day out, not much historical to lean on, depending on the situation. Physical testing is going to be your most prevalent, most common kind of go-to strategy for your, product development. Those physical testing has its, benefits and drawbacks, as you guys can see here. Can be a little bit of costly and time-consuming, but really the catalyst for a strategy And then the third, simulation, which, obviously we're going to be biased on this, but typically before leveraging simulation, you utilize one of the top two, historical product knowledge and physical testing. Now you can kind of see where these guys kind of come together in the top and where they might lack, although they are the two marquee strategies. Sometimes, it'll lack design insight, identifying critical variables, being able to see the unseen, and, making an informed decision based off of kind of like a trial by fire. This is where simulation can kind of come into play and where we feel it's incredibly important. Really, in the way that we do our collaborative consulting, our goal is that physical testing becomes a one-time validation instead of manual exploration. So utilizing all three of these, you're going to get the benefits of making informed decisions to be able to see the unseen, stronger innovation, one-time validation, right, when you input that simulation, faster optimization, confidence in design, mitigating risk, and visual substantiation. So pretty cool slide. I love going over this with people. It could really just be a pretty good overview of people's strategies and where we come into play. Now, this here is a little bit of a, we're going to go slow with this, but this is a very important slide. So, we've learned with startups that because you guys have to get to market fast while differentiating yourself from an established competitor, that time is key. So what a lot of people don't realize, I'm sure you guys are familiar with your typical product development roadmap, which is what we have here. But, hopefully this looks pretty familiar to you. You've got your kickoff, with a meeting with engineering, marketing, and sales, determine your guys' goals, specifications, and timing. And then you go into design. Once you have that design, you go into, testing and determine and evaluating the failures of that design, and then going through this kind of loop. This is a pretty common loop to, root cause, redesign, retest, refail, root cause, and kind of go through that until eventually you get into your redesign based off of what you found here or your product launch. So this is your typical roadmap from kickoff to launch of what it looks like. Now, if you look at that typical roadmap, a lot of people don't really consider things that would be, considered roadblocks, and they don't quantify them. And especially in a company's infancy, they don't really think about the time and the resources being dedicated to certain roadblocks. So these yellow squares here kind of, go into a little bit more detail about these roadblocks. So you go into kickoff. Well, after that, you got to go into, design collaboration, layout and packaging, determining which materials fail. So going in to test and fail, you could go in, and after that, you would have to, question the setup procedure, retest for validity of failure, identifying any variables. Did someone set this up correctly, or was it just a mistake early on and we didn't catch it? And going through those engineering reviews, that can take a lot of time, and then thrusting you back into that perpetual loop of root cause, redesign, and retest, where typically you kind of determine that there might need to be a concession made. Maybe your design, there's some things that you need to kind of dial back on, and there's some concessions needed. Well, that's not just as easy as making a concession. That means we have to get into a meeting, create documentation, justify, why we're making these concessions based what we found off of what we found during this root cause, redesign, retest, and refail, and then going into a redesign, only to find out that once we redesign our product and or launch it, specifically when we launch our product, maybe there's a field failure. Some products start coming back to us, that there's untested environments, maybe the use cases weren't evaluated properly enough, and you get a field failure where you have to go right back to root cause analysis, redesign, retest, refail, and kind of start this over. A lot of people don't really consider that as a part of that roadmap of when that can happen. So these are just all the real life scenarios when you're taking a product from kickoff to launch. Some of the different roadblocks that in real life cases you can run into. So this is where we kind of come into play. Enter RAN simulation. Okay, we have a little bit of a discussion on design collaboration and layout, packaging design, and material selection. Well, we can do feasibility studies, required form factors, and material sensitivity to make sure that when it goes into design, all of these multidiscipline design is considered. And then after we make our design, we're going to have confidence prior to testing that we can do one-time validation with no manual expiration, and mitigate the need to go after more componentry and things of that nature that we would be subjected to lead times for. Then we go through our test and failure, and while we're questioning our setup and procedure and retest for validity of failure, we can virtually test without physical limitations. So this eliminates the inevitable testing variances, right? So basically the ability, as I mentioned before, to see the invisible and kind of determine, what's really going on internally. And as an extra step with RAN simulation, if you're, kind of questioning, well, how easy is that to set up to really be able to get that insight? But we're there with you with real time tested, proven engineers that will be able to determine some of those insights and help you look into those. And then we go into our, again, root cause, design, retest, refail, and then we can actually provide, for these meetings and this documentation, visual substantiation behind the data. Where are there deficiencies, root cause analysis, warranty application notes that would be included when you go into launch for these failures to potentially, be backed by. And then again, in the event that you get a field failure, you'll have quick replication of an environment. Root cause substantiation, you'll have pre-made iterations on the software that you can quickly do an assessment of that failure. And all of these barriers are why it's so important to partner with a strong simulation provider. This is where we come in and are an extra arm to assist you through all these potential roadmaps. So now that I've proven to you why we definitely need simulation, why do we need Ansys? I think the majority of people understand the need for simulation, but a lot of people don't know there's 100 plus commercial simulation tools out there. Anything from your fluids to your structures and electromagnetics. So the big thing with best-in-class Ansys is that Ansys only focuses on simulation. That's all. So you might work with other companies and other simulation providers that provide simulation as one of the many technologies that they develop as a part of their existing technology, like CAD or PLM, data management. And simulation is just one piece of what they do. A really important thing to remember is that Ansys lives, breathes, and sleeps simulation. That's it. All from $300 to $400 million of R&D each year goes straight into simulation. So what makes them truly powerful, and why this is really important from the startup bundles for you guys, is they're all-encompassing tools. From fluids, structures to electronics. One of the examples I love using, everybody's here is either on a cell phone or a signed in on a laptop. You think about things that we use every day. So if we take your cell phone, for example, there's fluid movement, air movement inside of that cell phone. There's chips on a board with EMI and EMC consideration. There's different thermal and heat movements. All of these can be simulated and leveraged by Ansys software. And there's not many there's no other company in the world that can really say that when looking at the how dynamic they are. So they do everything no matter what the physics is. It's an entire simulation platform. Keyword being their platform. And to support their goal of pervasive simulation is not only to do what they do their own investments of, their, 3 to 400 million in R&D, but they make a handful of acquisitions a year to also support that. So they're constantly gobbling up these companies to add to their platform to make them a more platform ready solution. So, one that I, would talk about here, if you guys are looking at this slide, from, fluid structures, electromagnetic, a lot of people know that, but one that we're really excited about was they just made a recent purchase of this materials information management database called Granta. So, Granta basically has every material you can imagine and helps companies make decisions on material selection. You could literally find the properties of any material that you can possibly think of, and not only find it in Granta and use it to leverage into simulation, but you can find out where to buy it and where the cheapest product is and what are some other materials that would serve the same purpose that you need. Now, I'm not doing a pitch on Granta today, but the reason I'm telling you that is that 2 years ago that didn't exist. If you asked Ansys that, there was no way to leverage that. They're acquiring these companies to just further bolster their all-encompassing platform. And that's what makes it really excited to be with Ansys, is knowing that you don't have to go elsewhere. It's all there. And when leveraging the startup program, that's really, really important. So I'm sure you guys have all heard, or hopefully you've heard of Aberdeen Group, but Aberdeen Group did a survey that finds that companies that use simulation platforms are 24% more likely to meet product launch dates, 37% more likely to see decreased length of development time, and 50% more likely to see a reduction in simulation total cost of ownership in 12 months than companies that do not use simulation. So we understand how important, simulation could be. And hopefully after the previous slide, you guys understand, why Ansys is, really the giant in the room and why you guys hear so much about them. But you'd have to be crazy if you're not thinking in the back of your head at the same time that, yeah, they're the best, but they're also the most expensive. And that's a reputation that persists when it comes to Ansys. I talk to people all the time that won't even talk to me when I say the name because they say they can't afford it. The reality is that that's the Ansys of old. They've made a lot of changes to their commercial licenses, especially when it comes to startups, which is obviously, why we are here today. But essentially, they made a pretty brilliant strategic business move to create a startup program to enable startups like yourselves who need best-in-class simulation more than anyone. Because let's be clear, you can argue that startups would need best-in-class simulation. Really, it's the most important when you're in your infancy, and every mistake can be potentially compounded. So nobody needs their best-in-class simulation more than startups, but they don't have the capital available to leverage those tools, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. So that's why they created the startup bundle to provide these best-in-class tools for literally pennies on the dollar, right? So obviously, from the business case, you provide these tools at a very cost-effective way, and as you grow, Ansys grows with you. So the idea is that you get it for pennies on the dollar, you start leveraging it, you determine which tools you need, and then as you grow and hopefully see success in your business and go from startup to full-blown, profitable company, we get you over to the proper commercial license, and that's the idea. So there are two bundles that we'll cover today that are included as a part of the startup bundle. So two different separate bundles. So the first one is the structural and fluids bundle. So when you look at what's, kind of on here, you've got your mechanical enterprise, CFD, probably some pretty familiar stuff. All these include HPC packs. But what you can look at here too, right? That Granta selector that I explained, that would be on as a part of that startup bundle. And even, LS Dyna, things that people are definitely really familiar with. Another acquisition that we made that Ansys did. So the slide you guys are looking at right now, structural and fluids bundle, this is literally $500,000 in annual lease value of simulation software. So like literally $500,000 just in an annual lease value that you'd be getting for pennies on the dollar. So just want to make sure that we reiterate that. And kind of going into a little bit more granular detail, I think most people here understand FEA and structural analysis. So we won't get into, everything, but unlike some tools out there that just do your basics of linear statistics or natural frequencies, Ansys simulates all the physics and structural dynamics from the basics to the more complex nonlinearities. Creep, fatigue, topology optimization. They even have solutions for additive manufacturing, which is, I'm in the Bay Area, is huge right now. So all of these are included. And Ansys is like, again, that one-stop shop. From an Ansys Fluids tools and applications, anybody you ask, if anybody would tell you, Ansys has a variety of tools with the fluids and whatnot, but their bread and butter CFD tools are Fluent and CFX. Those are what they're probably their marquee. Anybody knows. So Fluent is known for being the most powerful CFD tool in the world. CFX is most powerful for anything spinning. So rotating. If you're thinking fans, turbos, blowers, things of that nature. This is kind of what's included on that. Now, the second bundle, if you will, is my favorite. Being in the Bay Area, obviously, when you think of Bay Area, you think of electronics, but something that I'm just personally fascinated by is, the electromagnetics bundle. So, keep in mind that all of these bundles, the previous as well as this one, do give you access to high performance computing as an add-on to it. So to achieve the fastest simulation results possible, both of these will include your high performance computing. And again, just on this page that we're looking at here, there's at least $500,000 in annual lease value, and just this page alone. So Ansys has a ton of tools in the world of electronics, and they've made a wise decision to rebundle the package of those tools, how you see here, and some kind of portfolio of that. I don't want to go too granular in this because there's just so much that is included on there, but their electronics portfolio will take you from low frequency motor designs all the way up to high frequency antennas and 5G applications, all the way down to the PCB level, where you're looking at power and signal integrity, radiated emissions, EMI, EMC. Obviously I can go through all of this, but you guys are going to get a copy of this presentation, so definitely take a look at this guy. But you can see what's included there. And just from a RAN sim side, we're able to put in some applications that we've worked. So there's a multiple of applications and diversification that cater to every industry imaginable, from antenna development to low frequency magnetics. So we provide these startup packages that can help you leverage for any of these electronic applications. But please also keep in mind that we do provide services and consulting on all of these as well. These are all projects that RANSIM has actually done ourselves. So pretty cool. Now, probably the most important part that you guys would be curious about. I did include this in the email to some people that attended today, so just kind of want to reiterate and go over really good detail on the eligibility requirements. So basically, to be eligible for a startup program, you must be a privately held company. You must be less than 10 years old as a company. Generate less than $5 million in annual revenue, and not be an engineering, consulting, or simulation services company. So before we get a bunch of people that exit out of here, if that doesn't apply to you, please keep in mind there's exceptions to every rule. So even if these don't necessarily apply to you, or one or two things is out of place that doesn't make sense for you, please call me. I'm going to give you all my contact information to be able to leverage that. But there's always a conversation to be had over exceptions that there potentially could be. So in terms of the cost that are associated with this, before we get to the end and I say, yeah, any questions? And they're like, yeah, what does it cost? So there's a couple things that go into what the cost is, and it's on a mixture of basically these eligibilities. So there's different levels of flexibility, but just know that in the numbers that we used before, on terms of $500,000 worth of simulation software, it literally can be pennies on the dollar. So if we wanted to have more granular discussions, those would be reserved for one-on-one. One reason for that is coming up on this next slide. reason that price can be very dependent can sometimes be on the willingness to engage on certain deliverables. So really, there's a kind of a recommended, an ask for people's willingness and companies' willingness to engage with us on marketing deliverables should we request it. So program members are not expected to fulfill it, right? So this is going to vary person to person, but you potentially have your company spotlighted on an online article, things of that nature. I'm working with a company in San Francisco right now that is kind of opted into a lot of this stuff. So we're doing a white paper with them. So again, the pricing discussion depends on a lot of those factors and a lot of those deliverables. So those will be, one-on-one with a particular company's specific situation that we can have that conversation. And finally, before we get into questions, we want you guys to stay informed. Again, you guys are going to be getting this entire presentation. I know maybe didn't take up the the entirety of the hour, which was my goal, but you guys know, dcrenshaw@rand.com. That's my number. We definitely want you guys to hit us up on randsim.com and subscribe to our newsletter, as well as our blog, which puts a lot of cool content on there in the world of simulation, and then obviously on LinkedIn for Rand Sim.